When he wakes up, you are his fiancé. She is just a stranger now.
But what if he remembers her?
He won't. I've erased her completely. This is your life now. Take it.
11:51 p.m. Fifth floor hallway. Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Dorothy Coleman stood outside room 507, with her phone pressed to her ear, voice low and completely controlled. Not the voice of a mother rushing to a hospital. The voice of a woman who had already made a decision and was now simply carrying it out. Serena. A pause. Black dress. Not too much makeup. Come now. She ended the call before her daughter could ask why. Her eldest daughter's handbag sat on the waiting area chair, left there when Zara walked to the front desk to sign Jihoon's admission paperwork. Dorothy looked at it for 3 seconds. Then she crossed the hallway and sat down beside it. The ring was in the inner pocket. Tiffany oval cut, 2.3 carats. Platinum band. Jihoon had placed it in Zara's palm the previous evening with one word. Soon. Dorothy held it up beneath the fluorescent light. 3 seconds. She placed it in her coat pocket and folded her hands in her lap. Zara had 9 minutes before she returned from the front desk. Dorothy had built a catering business from nothing in less time than that. 9 minutes was more than enough. Before we go any further, if you have never watched someone do something unforgivable and call it love, stay with this story. Drop a comment and tell us where you watch Yuang from and what time it is there. Is side. Subscribe if you have not yet. Because what happens when Zara walks back into that room is the kind of betrayal that does not start with a stranger. It starts with the last person she should ever have needed to protect herself from. Zara Coleman learned what sacrifice meant a lot long before she understood what it cost. It never arrived as one large loss. It came as a sequence of small ones, small enough that no one ever called them unfair, frequent enough that they became her character. She was 8 years old the first time. 12 colored pencils from her grandmother in a tin box with a lid that clicked. She kept them for exactly one afternoon before Serena admired the red one. Dorothy smiled and said 3 words. You're the stronger one. Zara placed the entire tin into her sister's hands. Not just the red pencil. All 12. She was 15 when a summer science scholarship arrived. 8 weeks at Northwestern, fully funded, her name on the acceptance letter. The family needed the money for Serena's fashion program instead. The letter went into a drawer. Dorothy said 3 words. She was 21 when the first person who had ever made her feel genuinely chosen began spending evenings with Serena while Zara studied. For the bar exam. No announcement, no confrontation. It simply became true. The slow way things become true when everyone agrees not to name them out loud. Zara understood what had happened only after it was already finished. She made dinner that night, did the dishes, and did not cry until the water was running and no one could hear her. Dorothy said 3 words. You're the stronger one. Zara received those words as a compliment for 29 years. That was the longest mistake she ever made. By 29, she had built something real from the habit of stepping aside. The Coleman Roberts Housing Rights Initiative operated from the 4th floor of a building on South Wabash Avenue. 12 staff members, 4 active cases, a waiting list of 340 families who needed someone to stand in a courtroom and refused to move. Zara was exceptional at that. She had learned early that the only space no one could take from her was the one she built with her own competence. Her 340 families were not an abstraction. She knew their names, she knew which cases had pending eviction dates, and which landlords were betting that a tired family, working 2 jobs, would not have time to fight back. They were almost always wrong about that. She was not bitter about the life she had built. She simply worked in the places no one else had claimed yet. She met Jihoon Kwan on a Thursday evening in October at the Onyx Room, 41st floor, Trump International, Chicago. Kwan Group had sponsored the housing charity gala. Zara attended because her organization received fund from their philanthropic arm, and because she had learned that when powerful people invite you to dinner, It is worth arriving early enough to understand exactly what they think they are purchasing. Balak. Ji-hoon was midway through prepared remarks about Kwan Group's commitment to community development when Zara raised her hand from the fourth table. Your last 3 major projects in this city increased average rental prices in surrounding neighborhoods by 23% over 18 months. She did not say it as an accusation. She said it as a fact that required an answer. What does affordable mean in that context? The room went quiet, not the polite quiet of a formal dinner, the kind of quiet that arrives when someone has said the thing everyone else was thinking but had decided to leave alone. Ji-hoon looked at her for 3 full seconds. Then he set his notes down. Sit with me after. They talked until 11 o'clock. Everyone else had gone home by 9. 3 days later, he called her, not about the gala, not about the funding, simply to ask whether she was free for dinner on Friday. 8 months. Not a romance built to be watched, built to be lived. He was the first person who disagreed with her in a way that assumed she was capable of handling it. She was the first person who required him to think harder than his position ever had. He called her on a Tuesday afternoon in January. No reason, no agenda, just to ask what she had concluded about a zoning ordinance she had mentioned 3 weeks earlier. She realized then that he had been listening, not politely, actually listening. Most people listen to Zara the way they listen to background music. Present, not retained. Ji-hoon listened the way a man listens when he intends to do something with what he hears. He told Min-jae CO over a private dinner in March, first time in my life, I want someone to know who I am before they know what I have. Min-jae looked across the table. Said nothing. He filed it away under the category of things Ji-hoon said that turned out to matter more than they sounded. By April, Serena had begun showing up at the department on the afternoon Zara worked late. She and Ji-hoon would be there when Zara arrived home. Serena on the couch with a glass of wine, Ji-hoon at the kitchen counter answering emails. It looked ordinary. It was the kind of thing that looks ordinary because everyone in the room has silently agreed to present it that way. Zara made dinner. The 3 of them talked about nothing in particular. She never questioned it. She had no reason to. Or so she told herself, in the way you tell yourself things you have decided not to examine. She had no reason to. That understanding, the difference between no reason and no cause, would cost her more than anything she had surrendered before it. The evening before the accident, Ji-hoon took out the ring. No ceremony, no speech prepared. He placed it in her open palm in the kitchen of his penthouse at 233 North Michigan Avenue. 47 floors above the city, downtown Chicago still lit below them, and said one word. Soon. Zara looked at the ring, then at him. She did not say yes. She did not say anything. She placed the ring back in his palm, closed his fingers around it, and pressed her hand flat against his chest, directly over the jacket pocket, where he would keep it until the time was right. When it's time, she said. He looked down at her hand. She could feel his heartbeat through the fabric. Neither of them moved. She went home at 12:14 a.m. For the first time in 29 years, she fell asleep without reminding herself to be stronger by morning. It was such a small thing, such an ordinary thing. She lay in her apartment on the 14th floor of a building on South Michigan Avenue and looked at the ceiling in the dark and thought, this is what it feels like to not be afraid of wanting something. She had not known, until that moment, that she had been afraid of it her entire life. On the drive home, stopped at a red light on Michigan Avenue, she glanced down at her left hand, resting on the steering wheel. The ring finger was bare. She had given it back. It would find its way to her when the time was right. They both understood that without needing to say it. She looked at the empty space for 4 seconds, and instead of the old reflex she had carried since childhood, the practiced, quiet do not want things too much. Something entirely different surfaced. Not much longer. The light changed. She drove. She did not know those were the last 4 seconds she would spend believing that. What neither Zara nor Ji-hoon knew. In that quiet after midnight, when both of them slept with the certainty of something about to begin, was that 9 hours and 47 minutes later, a truck would cross lanes on I-94 East near the Ohio Street exit. And the course of both their lives would change, not because of the accident, because of what a woman with 9 minutes in a coat pocket had already decided to do. The accident happened at 11:34 p.m. on I-94 East, 30 yards past the Ohio Street exit. A refrigerator truck drifted 2 feet into the left lane without signaling. Ji-hoon's car caught side impact at 52 miles per hour. The airbag deployed. His head struck the window frame on the left side, the angle the airbag did not cover. By the time the ambulance reached Northwestern Memorial, the emergency room physician had written 4 words in the intake notes: traumatic amnesia, extent undetermined. The injury was real. The memory loss was real. What happened next was not. Dorothy Coleman received the hospital call at 11:51 p.m. Ji-hoon had listed Zara's phone, and Zara had added her mother as backup contact the month before. Zara was in the shower when the call came through. By the time she had her coat on, Dorothy was already gone. She arrived at Northwestern Memorial 9 minutes before her daughter. In those 9 minutes, Dorothy found the nurse on duty for the 5th floor, a woman at the end of a double shift, tired, in the particular way of people who have absorbed too much of other people's emergencies, and explained with great maternal calm that her younger daughter was Ji-hoon's girlfriend, that her elder daughter was a close family friend who sometimes accompanied them, and that the doctors had warned against confusion. During recovery, she just wanted everyone to understand the situation before the patient regained consciousness. The nurse nodded. She had no reason not to. Alec, when the attending physician came to assess Ji-hoon's condition later that night, Dorothy sat in the corner of the room and answered his questions quietly and carefully, filling in details, his stress levels in the weeks before the accident, his relationship with Serena, their history together. She did not raise her voice. She did not appear to be doing anything other than helping. The physician thanked her. He noted in the chart that the patient's girlfriend and her mother were both present and cooperative. By the time Zara's name appeared in any hospital record that night, it appeared under the heading of family friend. The word girlfriend was already attached to someone else. Then Dorothy sat down beside her eldest daughter's handbag on the waiting room chair, opened the inner pocket, and took out the ring. Serena arrived at 11:59 p.m. Dorothy placed the ring on her finger without a single word, just a look that closed every question before it could be asked. Serena looked down at her hand. She looked up at her mother. She said nothing. That silence was a choice. Ji-hoon opened his eyes at 12:07 a.m. The room came into focus slowly, ceiling tiles, fluorescent light. The antiseptic quiet of a hospital at night. He turned his head. Serena was beside his bed, her hand wrapped around his, tears still on her face. His brain reached for what it knew. It anchored to what was present. Then his gaze moved across the room and found Zara standing near the door. His expression did not change. No flicker of recognition quickly suppressed. No confusion he was working to conceal. Just the calm, courteous look of a man regarding a stranger he had not yet been introduced to. "I'm sorry," he said. "Are you a friend of Serena's?" Zara did not move. She stood with her hands at her sides and looked at the man who had placed a ring in her palm 17 hours earlier. She looked at the ring on Serena's finger. She looked at her mother's face, the carefully arranged expression of concern, the eyes that would not quite meet hers. She understood everything in that moment. She had spent 29 years learning how to absorb things without showing what they cost. She stood in room 507 and used every one of those years. She met the doctor's eyes when he mentioned the amnesia. She nodded at Dorothy's careful explanation. She looked at Ji-hoon, the man who had held her hand at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night because a conversation about zoning ordinances had run long and neither of them had wanted to stop, and she received his polite stranger smile with flinching. Later, she would think, the worst part was not that she didn't fight. The worst part was how ready she had been, without knowing it, to stand exactly where she stood. 29 years of practice. You're the stronger one. You're the stronger one. You're the stronger one. She had never been more prepared for anything in her life. That is not a compliment. She also understood that understanding changed nothing. Not yet. Not here. The doctor explained things to the family. He used words like selective retrograde amnesia and contextual memory disruption. He was careful and thorough, and the family listened with appropriate expressions of concern. Zara listened too. She knew that what he was describing was documented and medically possible. She also knew, standing in room 50-7 with her mother's carefully arranged face in her peripheral vision, that it was being used to accomplish something that had nothing to do with medicine. In the days that followed, Dorothy worked with the quiet efficiency of someone who had been preparing for longer than one night. She obtained the spare key to Ji-hoon's penthouse at 233 North Michigan Avenue. Serena had been given 1 month earlier, something Zara had never thought to question, and cleared the apartment of every trace. A charcoal cardigan on the couch, 2 books with Zara's handwriting on the inside covers, a photograph held to the refrigerator by a small magnet, taken on a Sunday in July at the lakefront, both of them mid-law in a way that could not be explained as anything other than what it was. She constructed a history for Serena and Ji-hoon. They had met 2.5 years ago at a Coleman's Table catering event. He had pursued her for months. She told the story in small variations, the way a careful person does. Consistent in the facts, natural in the telling. A recovering brain builds on what it is given. Ji-hoon had no framework on which to hang doubt. She told Zara privately that emotional confrontation could cause permanent neurological damage during recovery. That the strongest, kindest thing Zara could do was wait for Ji-hoon to remember on his own terms. If he truly loves you, Dorothy said, he will remember. It sounded like comfort. It was a cage with the door left open, so Zara would walk in herself. Serena moved into the penthouse on the 23rd day. One evening in the 6th week, Ji-hoon stayed late at a board meeting. Serena sat alone in the living room, lamp on, the rest of the apartment in shadow. She looked at the bookshelves. Titles she did not recognize. A playlist saved under Wednesday mornings with songs she had never heard him play. A coffee mug pushed to the back of the cabinet that did not match the others. She moved through the apartment slowly, the way you move through a space that belongs to someone else's life, touching the edges of it without quite settling anywhere. She looked down at the ring on her finger. She had worn it for 6 weeks. She had not once asked who it had been bought for. She had told herself this was because the question did not matter. What mattered was where things were now. But that was not quite true, and in the silence of the apartment, with the city lit up outside the floor-to-ceiling windows and Ji-hoon's things arranged around her like the furniture of a life she had not lived, she understood that she had not asked because she already knew the answer. And the answer was the kind of thing that, once named, could not be unnamed. She turned off the lamp and went to bed before Ji-hoon came home. She told herself she was tired. That was easier than the other thing. Zara visited Ji-hoon 3 times in the weeks after his discharge, always with Serena present, always introduced as a family friend. The 3rd visit, when she stood to leave, Ji-hoon said, "Thank you for coming, Zara. Serena always says you're one of the good ones." She smiled at him. She walked to the hallway. She pressed her back against the wall and stood there for 3 minutes without moving. Then she pushed off the wall and kept walking. That night she called Dorothy. 3 sentences. "I'm taking the fellowship in Washington. I leave Monday. Don't call me about this." Dorothy said, "That's the right decision." She said it the way she always said it, the way a woman says something she has already decided is true. 5:41 a.m. Monday. 1 bag. The car reversed out of the parking space on West Evergreen Avenue and pointed south. Chicago looked exactly the same in the dark before dawn. That was the part that made it hardest. Leaving a city that would not notice she was gone. She did not cry until she crossed into Indiana, 41 minutes later, she cried for the length of one song that came on by accident from a playlist she had forgotten to change. Then she turned the music off. Some things do not deserve a soundtrack. What Dorothy Coleman believed. As she watched a pair of taillights disappear down West Evergreen Avenue from her kitchen window that Monday morning, was that she had protected her daughter from a future that would have broken her. What she had actually done was hand the one person who had ever chosen Zara first, chosen her freely, before knowing what she had to offer, a version of his own life in which Zara Coleman did not exist. She would not understand the difference until it was already too late. Washington, D.C. did not know Zara Coleman's name. That was the first thing she noticed when she arrived. The absence of a story. No one at the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center on K Street looked at her the way people in Chicago had started looking at her in the weeks after the hospital, with the particular careful kindness reserved for someone everyone has decided is fragile. In D.C., she was simply the new fellowship attorney from Chicago, the one who arrived with one bag and finished her first assignment 3 days before the deadline. She slept 8 hours her first night there. She had not slept 8 consecutive hours in 4 months. The fellowship paid $3,400 a month and came with a shared office and access to case files that had been sitting in limbo for years, waiting for someone who knew how to read a housing covenant written in 1987 and still make it mean something today. Zara knew how to do that. She had learned at a firm in Chicago that paid well and moved slowly, then left after 2 years. Because the cases she cared about were not the cases they took. She had been building towards something for a long time. She had not known, until she got to Washington, that she had been building toward this. She went to work. She did not allow herself a lot else. The work was real, and it was hers. The fellowship placed her on the housing rights litigation team for the Columbia Heights Coalition. 247 families facing displacement as a developer sought to rezone 3 blocks of existing residential housing for luxury mixed-use construction. The case was good. The law was complex. The developer had money and patience and several attorneys whose job was specifically to make the process as slow and expensive as possible. Zara was comfortable with slow and expensive. She had built her entire career on it. She met Minjai Seo in the conference room on the 2nd floor of the D.C. Office of Planning at 10:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in February. He was the lead representative for CO Capital Partners, the investment firm behind the Columbia Heights rezoning proposal. He sat across a long table from the coalition's legal team with 3 attorneys of his own and architectural renderings that had clearly cost more than Zara's organization's entire quarterly budget. He was 34 years old, Korean American, and had the particular kind of stillness that belongs to people who are used to being the most dangerous person in a room and have stopped needing anyone else to know it. Zara was not impressed by stillness. She spent 2 hours and 11 minutes systematically dismantling every projected benefit figure in the developer's impact assessment. She did it without raising her voice. She did it by knowing the data better than the people who had written it. When the meeting ended without resolution, Min Jae gathered his documents and passed her in the doorway. He stopped. "You left your folder," he said, and held it out. She looked at him. "I know you're going to use everything in that folder in this next session." "I know," he said. "I'm returning it. Anyway." She took it. He walked away. She stood in the doorway for a moment longer than she needed to. He called her office 3 days later. Not to negotiate, he said. He wanted to understand the coalition's actual priorities before the next session, that his firm had flexibility in the design that the attorneys hadn't surfaced yet. She agreed to one off-the-record meeting at a restaurant on 14th Street. They talked for 3 hours. He ordered water. She ordered coffee, finished hers, and drank his when it was clear he had forgotten about it. He did not mention this. She did not apologize. The second meeting happened the following week. then the week after. By the third meeting, the dispute had entered a secondary phase that required neither of them to be in the same room. They met anyway. He brought a revised impact report that addressed 2 of her objections directly. She read it in the lobby before going in and came prepared with 3 more. At the end of the session, he sent a single text message on the walk back to his car. "You're right about the third one." She looked at that message for longer than she intended. Nobody in her professional life had ever responded to one of her arguments by simply saying she was right. Most people responded by finding a different argument. His firm ran a standard background check on the opposition's legal team in April, routine litigation preparation. The report on Zara Coleman was 3 pages: education, work history, professional associations, and at the bottom, under prior affiliations, a cross-reference to a real estate matter in Chicago. Quan Capital Group, TAN, a community housing partnership her organization had been in preliminary discussions with before the relationship was discontinued. Ji-hoon Kwan. Min Jae read the name. He set the report down and sat for a long time looking at nothing in particular. Ji-hoon had introduced him to a woman 11 months ago at a private dinner in March. Had said, in the way Ji-hoon said things he meant more than he'd let on, "First time in my life, I want someone to know who I am before they know what I have." Min Jae had filed it away. He had not thought about it again until the accident, and then everything afterward moved quickly. The hospital, Serena, the slow recalibration of what was being presented as true. He had questions he had not asked. He had not asked them, because asking them would have required him to believe something he didn't yet have enough evidence to believe. The report on Zara Coleman gave him enough. He made 2 calls that evening. The first was to a contact in Chicago who knew the full timeline of what had actually happened in room 507 at 12:07 a.m. on a night in November. The second was to cancel a meeting the following morning so he could spend the time thinking clearly. He did not call Ji-hoon. He did not call Zara. He told himself he needed more information before he could act. That was partly true, Alec. The other part, the part he did not examine too closely, was that he had spent 6 weeks in meetings with a woman who stayed 20 minutes after every session to talk to the paralegals, who corrected her own arguments in real time when she found a flaw in them, who had laughed exactly once during a deposition preparation, and then immediately looked embarrassed about it. He was not ready to be the person who handed her back to someone else. That was not the kind of thing Min Jae-seo admitted to himself without a fight. In Chicago that same April, Ji-hoon found a tote bag pushed to the back of the coat closet in his penthouse. Dark canvas, no branding, a small enamel pin of a gavel on the strap. He turned it over in his hands. It was not Serena's. He could not place it. He put it back in the closet and closed the door. 3 days later, he opened the closet again. He moved the bag to the shelf where he could see it. He did not know why he did that. He only knew he was not ready to throw it away. Zara did not let herself think about Min Jae-seo on the evenings she did not see him. She was very deliberate about this. One Wednesday in May, she was rereading a deposition at her desk and realized she had been looking at the same paragraph for 11 minutes without reading it. She was not thinking about the deposition. She put it down, looked out the window at K Street in the early dark, then picked it up again. That was as close as she let herself get to admitting anything. She told herself it was close enough. What Min Jae-seo had not yet decided. Sitting alone with a 3-page background report and 11 months of questions he had never asked, was what it meant to find the right person for someone else and then find her first. He did not have an answer that night. But the question did not leave him, and anyone who has carried a question like that will tell you that is already the beginning of an answer. Sun-hee Kwan arrived in Chicago on a Tuesday morning in May, flying in from Seoul without announcement, which was the way she preferred to arrive places when she wanted to see them as they actually were, rather than as they had been arranged for her inspection. She stayed in Ji-hoon's penthouse. He had given her a key 3 years ago and never asked for it back. On her second morning, While looking for his insurance paperwork, she found his wallet on the kitchen counter. She found instead a restaurant receipt, Monteverde, 1020 West Madison Street, a table for two. A Friday night, 7 months before the accident. The receipt had been folded and refolded enough times that the paper had softened along the crease. Serena did not eat at places like Monteverde. Sun-hee knew her daughter-in-law's preferences with the precision of a woman who had been watching someone carefully for longer than that person realized. Serena's tastes ran toward places with good lighting and visible crowds. Monteverde was a restaurant for people who wanted to have a real conversation without anyone interrupting it. She put the receipt in her coat pocket. Then she went to her room and opened her phone to the messages between her and Ji-hoon. She scrolled back to the previous September. There it was. A message she had almost forgotten. Iyama, I want to introduce someone to you. Her name is Zara. I think you'd like her. She had written back asking when. He had never replied. 3 weeks later came the accident. Sun-hee sat on the edge of the bed and held her phone in both hands. She had spent the past months telling herself that Ji-hoon seemed happy enough, that Serena was pleasant and capable, and that, whatever the arrangement was, it appeared to be functioning. She had ignored the small persistent feeling was wrong in a way she could not name. Bad. She had a receipt now. She had a name. She could name it. Ji-hoon had been having the same dream for 2 months. Not a complete dream. A fragment. His kitchen, though the arrangement felt slightly wrong, the way spaces become wrong in sleep. A woman standing near the counter, not facing him, saying something he couldn't hear. Evening light through the window at a specific angle. And the feeling, precise and physical, the kind that stays after waking, of a hand placed flat against his chest. He never saw her face. He woke from the dream at 3:14 a.m. on a Thursday. He got up, went to the coat closet, and took out the tote bag he had moved to the visible shelf a month ago. He held it in the dark. The enamel gavel pin caught a sliver of light from the city outside. He put it back. He did not go back to sleep. Minjae Siso drove to Coleman's Table Catering at 847 West Armitage Avenue on a Thursday afternoon with the background report folded in his jacket pocket and 11 months of patience that had finally run out. Dorothy came out when her assistant said someone was asking for her by name. When she saw who it was, she stopped walking. Minjae did not sit down. He placed the background report on the counter between them without explanation. She looked at it long enough to understand. I know what happened in that hospital, he said. I know about the ring. I know about the nurse. I know about the apartment. He paused. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here because Ji-hoon is my oldest friend, and what was done to him, and to her, should not continue. Dorothy held his gaze for 6 full seconds. She was out of moves. She knew it. She told him. Not from guilt, not yet. She framed it the way she always framed it. I was protecting Zara. She would have given up everything for him and had nothing left when it ended. Minjae listened to all of it. Then, whose ending were you afraid of, Miss Coleman? His or yours? He left before she could find an answer. He called Sun-hee that evening. She had already found the receipt. She had already found the text message. They met at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue the next morning. Sun-hee placed her phone on the table between them, the September text on the screen. Her name is Zara. I think you'd like her. Minjae told her what Dorothy had said. Sun-hee listened without interrupting, which meant she was very angry. She was only completely still when she was very angry. When he finished, she picked up her phone and put it in her bag. We tell him today, she said. Yes, Minjae said. They went together. Ji-hoon read his own text message from his mother's phone, once. Then again. He recognized the words as his own, the syntax, the specific brevity, the way he wrote when something mattered. But he had no memory of sending them. No memory of anyone named Zara. What he had was the dream, the hand on his chest, the quality of evening light that felt, every time he woke, like something he had actually lived. Minjae placed the tote bag on the coffee table. Beside it, the restaurant receipt. Then a photograph, a Sunday at the lakefront, taken from behind. Ji-hoon mid-law, a woman beside him, her face not quite visible, but the angle of his own body told him what the photograph could not. He was leaning toward her, the way a person leans toward warmth without deciding to. He set the photograph down. He looked at his mother. She looked back the way she always did when she was waiting for him to say something true. "Where is she?" he said. "Son," he said, "Washington." That night, Ji-hoon called Serena into the living room. He put the tote bag on the table, the photograph beside it, the restaurant receipt beside that. He said nothing. He waited. Before she spoke, he picked up the restaurant receipt and looked at it the way he had looked at it a dozen times in the past weeks, searching for a memory the paper could not give him. Then he set it down and looked at Serena directly. "I have been trying to remember you," he said, not in the way the doctors described. A different kind. The kind where you remember what a person is made of. He paused. "I cannot remember a single argument we have had. I cannot remember what you believe about anything that matters. I cannot remember one moment where you wanted something for yourself that cost you something." He looked at her steadily. People who love each other remember those things, because those are the things that require you to actually pay attention. Serena looked at the three things on the table. She looked at Ji-hoon. Her expression was not quite guilt. It was closer to the relief of someone waiting for a conversation that has been overdue for a long time. "Mama said you would never remember," she said. "I know," Ji-hoon said. She was almost right. Serena reached down and slid the ring from her finger. She placed it on the table beside the photograph. No drama, no tears, just the quiet of a woman setting down something she had always known was not hers to keep. Ji-hoon stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse long after Serena had gone. 47 floors below, Chicago continued. Somewhere to the south, I-94 East cut through the city in both directions. He could not see it from here, but he had known for months, without knowing why, exactly where it was. The photograph was on the coffee table behind him, the tote bag beside it, the ring beside that. He stood at the window until the city began to lighten at the edges, the gray that comes before dawn when the dark finally runs out of reasons to stay. Then he picked up his phone. What Ji-hoon Kwan had spent 11 months being told was that the life he could not remember was the one he was living. The photograph said otherwise. He did not know yet if she would let him near enough to explain that, but he knew where she was. And he knew that not going would be the one thing he could never forgive himself for. The letter from Kwan Group's legal office arrived at Coleman's Table Catering on a Monday morning in June. It was 3 paragraphs long. The first acknowledged the existing service contract. The second cited a strategic realignment of vendor partnerships. The third noted that termination was effective in 14 days and that all outstanding invoices would be settled within that window. $147,000 per year. 14 days' notice. No phone call. No explanation beyond the 3 paragraphs. Dorothy read the letter twice. Then she folded it and put it at the bottom of her desk drawer. Sun-hee Kwan requested a meeting the following week. They met at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue on a Wednesday morning. The meeting lasted 19 minutes. Dorothy left first. No one who saw the 2 women at that table would have described the conversation as anything other than quiet. Serena's ring arrived at the penthouse in a small, padded envelope 3 days after she moved out. No return address, no note. Ji-hoon held it for a moment, then placed it in the drawer with the restaurant receipt and the photograph. He did not throw any of it away. Zara stopped in Chicago for one day in June, on her way to a federal pretrial hearing in Washington. She had a 4-hour layover at O'Hare and had not planned to tell anyone she was there. Dorothy was waiting at Terminal 3, Gate B14, when Zara came through security. They sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside the gate window, planes moved slowly across the tarmac in the early morning gray. Dorothy spoke first. She explained again the reasoning she had always had, that she had watched Zara absorb loss after loss and call it strength. and she could not watch her do it again with a man who might one day simply not be there. That she had seen what happened when Zara gave herself fully to someone, the way she rearranged her entire life around another person's presence, and then had nothing left when that presence disappeared. She had watched it happen twice before. She had not been willing to watch it happen a third time. Zara listened to all of it, then listened to all of, then, Mama, you spent my whole life telling me I was the stronger one. Her voice was calm, not cold, honest in the way she had learned to be when the performance was no longer worth the energy. What that actually meant was, Zara can take the loss, again and again. You never once asked me if I wanted to be that strong. Dorothy did not have an answer. For the first time in 29 years, she did not have one. I'm not angry at you, Zara said. I used to think I would be. But protecting someone can look exactly like the thing that's hurting them. You taught me to make myself smaller so I would fit inside the space you decided was safe for me. She paused. I don't fit there anymore. She stood. She embraced her mother, brief, genuine, without ceremony. Then she picked up her bag and walked to the gate. Dorothy sat at gate B14 for a long time after Zara's flight had gone. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and watched planes move across the tarmac, and she thought about a woman who had spent 29 years being told she was the stronger one, and what it had cost her to believe it, and what it had cost her to stop. Minjai Seo called Zara on a Thursday afternoon in late June, 2 days before Ji-hoon boarded a flight to Washington. He told her what Dorothy had told him. Room 507. The ring, the nurse, the apartment cleared of every trace. He told her all of it in the flat, factual way he told things when they mattered, without softening, without drama, because he had enough respect for her to believe she could carry the truth without help. When he finished, she was quiet. Then, why are you telling me this now? Because he's coming to Washington, and you deserve to walk into that conversation knowing exactly what happened. A silence. And you, Minjae? He didn't answer immediately. I found you first, he said finally. That doesn't mean I found you for me. She didn't respond to that. Neither did he. Take care of yourself, he said. You too, she said. She hung up. She had spent 5 months in Washington building something. A case, a life, a version of herself that did not require someone else's attention in order to exist. She had learned, slowly and without drama, that she was worth choosing. Minjai had shown her that without making a project of it. Ji-hoon had apparently arrived at the same conclusion by a different route. Through absence, through fragments, through a tote bag on a closet shelf and a restaurant receipt that would not stay in the drawer where it belonged. She sat with all of that for 17 minutes. Then she thought about the 247 families in Columbia Heights who were counting on someone to stand in a courtroom and refused to move. She picked up her pen. She went back to work. That was what she knew how to do. Ji-hoon arrived at the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. He stood on the steps for 11 minutes before the door opened. He had rehearsed nothing. He had decided somewhere, over the Midwest at 35,000 feet, that rehearsing was a form of control he did not have the right to exercise. He had controlled enough already by deciding to come. What he said when she appeared would have to be what was actually true, not what was persuasive, not what was most likely to work. He had spent 11 months inside a story built by someone else's calculations. He was done with calculations. He stood on the steps and did not think about what to say. He thought about a kitchen, a hand on his chest, a woman who had given a ring back to a man who wasn't ready yet and said 3 words, "When it's time." He had not understood what that meant until now. Zara came out with a file folder under one arm and her phone to her ear. She was finishing a sentence when she looked up. She stopped. 4 seconds. Neither of them moved. 2. She put her phone in her pocket. I remember, Ji-hoon said. Not everything, but enough. Zara looked at him the way you look at someone when you have finally stopped expecting them to show up, and they have shown up anyway. Enough to know what? She said. Enough to know I should have been standing here a long time ago. Enough to know what was taken from both of us. He held her gaze. Enough to know I don't have a right to ask you for anything, and that I'm here anyway because the alternative was living the rest of my life knowing I didn't try. Zara was quiet for a moment. I learned to stand here by myself, she said. That's not nothing. I need you to understand that before anything else. I do, he said. She looked at him for 3 more seconds. I have a meeting at 7. She turned toward the door. If you want to talk, you know where I am. The door closed behind her. Ji-hoon stood on the steps of the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center as the evening settled around him. The city moved past at its ordinary pace. A woman walked her dog. A food truck pulled away from the curb. A group of people crossed the intersection at K Street without looking up. Nobody knew what had just happened on those steps. That felt right, somehow. The most important things rarely announced themselves. He would walk back to his hotel eventually. He would sit in a room on the 14th floor and order room service he would not eat and watch the light change over the city. He would think about Zara standing in room 507 with her hands at her sides, absorbing a lie in real time, and not once breaking the composure she had built over 29 years of being asked to be the stronger one. He had not known that about her then. He knew it now. He thought, she has already survived the worst version of this. She survived it without help, while it was still happening. Whatever came next was her choice. Not because he had no preference, because she had earned the right to it in a way that he had not. The elevator doors opened. Zara stepped in. The door closed behind her. She leaned against the wall. The building was quiet, just the hum of the ventilation system and the distant sound of the city outside. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. 4 seconds. The elevator reached the 3rd floor. The doors opened. The corridor stretched ahead of her, lit and empty and waiting. She stepped out. Some stories end with the right choice made at exactly the right time. Some end with the wrong one. The truest ones end in a moment so ordinary, it almost doesn't look like an ending at all. A woman stepping out of an elevator, a phone in her hand. A hallway she has walked 100 times. What she did next was hers. It had always been hers. If you stayed with this story from that hospital hallway all the way to this moment, thank you for being here. We have some questions, and we genuinely want to know what you think. Does Zara owe Ji-hoon that conversation? He did not choose to forget her, but he was not there for 11 months while she learned to stand on her own. Does showing up now, even with the truth, earn him the right to begin again? And Dorothy, a woman who believed every single time that she was protecting her daughter. Was she wrong? Or was she simply wrong about who she was actually protecting? And what about Min Jai, the man who found her first, who told the truth at the exact moment the truth cost him something? Do you think the story was fair to him? Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. If this story reminded you of someone who was told their whole life they were the stronger one, who gave and gave until the giving became invisible, share it with them. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next one.